Jesus and put a crown on Mary's head there, and the halo signifying divinity. So these things came and were adopted by the papacy. The birth of Tammuz, who we read about in Ezekiel chapter 8, was December the 25th. And so that was adopted by the papacy as the birth of Jesus Christ, celebrated as Christmas with all the pagan rituals and symbols, mistletoe, pine trees, red and green, a God who travels through the sky, drawn by chariots, and all of these things were associated with the worship of Tammuz. We have Lent, the 40 days of mourning for the death of Tammuz, adopted into papacy as Lent. We have the pagan feast to Ishtar, the Babylonian goddess, adopted into by the papacy as the feast of Easter. And we have the mother goddess who was worshipped as Queen of Heaven, now being, the papacy now names her Mary and worships Mary as the Queen of Heaven. We have the repetitive mantra type prayers going over and over and over and over as adopted and become Hail Marys, the type of prayer which Jesus says are vain repetition of the heathen or the pagan. It's a pagan type of prayer. So all of these things came in and were adopted by the papacy. We have here the Dagon priests who wore fish head type headdresses. We have here again fish type headdress of the pagan high priests. We have the Egyptian priest of the dead with the fish headdress, adopted by the papacy again, the fish head mitre headdress. We have here the priest of Dagon with the pail of holy water, with a brush sprinkling the holy water, adopted in by the papacy as sprinkling of holy water. We have talking to the spirits of the dead, carried over as novenas or prayers to the dead saints, which God said in Deuteronomy 18 is an abomination. We have the belief that the dead visits the living, and that feast was held in November, came over, adopted by the papacy as All Souls and All Saints Day, November 1 and 2. We have the belief of the immortality of the soul and the present burning place of torment, carried over by the papacy, teaching consciousness in death and hellfire that is now burning. You have the belief in the place that you could go and have your sins burnt off before you go into the next phase of paradise, adopted in and become the doctrine of purgatory. You have the exposed heart of the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, which was adopted by the papacy and became the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And we have the title Pontifex Maximus, which was of the Persian high priest and of the Roman high priest, being adopted by the papacy as their title, Pontifex Maximus. We have, remember we talked about the symbols being put on the garments of the priests. We have the sun symbol there, adopted straight out of this here. This is either a Babylonian or Persian relief that was excavated in archaeological finds, in archaeological digs. We see the sun symbol here, same as on the mitre of this Pope here. Then we see the Maltese cross, what we call the Maltese cross. We see it here on the pagan idols. So these things were adopted to attract, to make the Christian religion attractive to those who were in their pagan worship. We have here the two-finger sign of blessing. This statue here was originally of Zeus and originally of Jupiter, was renamed to St. Peter and placed in the St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. And here we see him with a two-finger blessing sign, like that. And then here we have in the Eastern religion the two-finger blessing. Here we have in Buddhism the two-finger blessing. Here we have the hand of Buddha, the two-finger blessing. And here we have the papacy with the two-finger blessings. All of these things were brought in to the Christian religion, which you cannot find any of that in the Bible. The first day of the week was kept in honor of the sacred Persian god Mitra, which was called the Day of the Sun, adopted by Romans as the Venerable Day of the Sun, became by the papacy the Christian Sabbath. So all of these things, brethren, are but just a few, because our time is going. These are just a few of the wine of Babylon, which was incorporated into the pure Christian teachings and made it miry clay, wine of Babylon. So now, the second angel declared that Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Remember, it says, not once fallen, but twice fallen. When Martin Luther and the reformers started pointing out all of these inconsistencies with the papal teachings and with the biblical teachings, a great reformation started. That's how we have the Protestant churches coming about. They broke out of the Catholic Church, and we had the Lutheran Church, we had the Calvin, and we had the Methodists, and we have all these churches coming out away from these Babylonish teachings, and that was a great blow to the papacy. And so the papacy decided to clean up some of his doctrines as much as possible. So what it did, according to the World Encyclopedia 1980 edition, the revival of the Roman Catholic Church in Europe during the 16th and early 17th centuries. It began as a reaction to the Protestant Reformation and was intended to strengthen the church against Protestantism and the prevailing humanism of the Renaissance. The reforms were essentially conservative, trying to remove many of the abuses that had crept in the late medieval church and win new prestige to create a new, better image for the church, for the papacy. The major impetus for reform emerged from the pontificate of Paul III, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. This is what it did. It eradicated or got rid of simony, which was the sale of forgiveness of sins. So if you wanted your sin to be forgiven, you had to pay. You gave your house, you gave your land, whatever, to get your son, daughter, or relative out of purgatory, all of these sort of things. So they got rid of that, standardized Roman Catholic theology, and undertook institutional reforms, and so on. So what they did, they created this society of Jesuits. These were men of intellectual excellence, and they were given the task to go through the Bible and see how they can get scriptures from the Bible to support the pagan teachings that the papacy had set up. So now, and we saw that was for the purpose of giving the church prestige. Where is it? Yes, to win new prestige for the papacy, to, you're doing a new public relations image now. And just when this was being accomplished, what happened in 1798? We had the papacy losing temporal power. In 1798, General Berthier made his entrance into Rome, abolished the papal government, and established a secular one. So the papacy received a deadly double blow. One from the Protestant Reformation, and the second one when its temporal power was removed and the papacy was made subject to the government of France, and then after that to the government of Italy. This was Babylon's first fall. The blow was deadly because a kingdom is referred to in prophecy as a beast. Yes, a beast. Right. A kingdom, for a kingdom to exist, there needs to be a king and dominion. That's why you get the word kingdom. Right? You need to have a king and dominion. In 1798, the king was removed and the dominion was taken away, so the beast died, prophetically speaking. But since Babylon is to fall twice, it needs to revive, it needs to come back again, it needs to rise again, it needs to resurrect, it needs to come back in power and as a beast again, that is, as a nation again. Now the papacy worked diligently to bring this to fruition. And 131 years after 1798, in the year 1929, this was fulfilled when the government of Italy signed an agreement with the papacy which made Vatican City an independent nation, even though it was within the borders of Italy. And here we have the article announcing this in the New York Times. The year is 1927, the date February 12, Tuesday. And it says, Vatican and Italy signed pact recreating a papal state. 60 years of enmity ended. Throngs cheer in the streets. Acclaim Gaspari. Gaspari is this man here who represented the papacy. He is a cardinal, but I understand the Pope was too ill to make it to this meeting. So Cardinal